Good news, everyone! Talking Futurama is coming back for Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 2.
Fresher than a summer ham, this podcast comes every Friday. And if you sign up at the $5 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you can hear each episode as it goes live.
That's right. Sign up today at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons for $5 to hear Talking Futurama every Friday throughout the rest of 2020 and also all the previous episodes we've done so far.
So head over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons now, or we're going to clamp you.
Shut up and take my money.
I heartily endorse this event or product.
Ahoy hoy everybody, and welcome to Talking Simpsons, a crowning achievement in entertainment technology. I am your host, the covered in space dust, Bob Mackey, and this is our chronological exploration of The Simpsons. Who else is here with me today?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and consider this a podcast of forgotten lore.
And who do we have on the line?
I'm Ian Jones-Quartey, and come on, do it, man, the blood thing.
And today's episode is the very first Treehouse of Horror.
What a haul this year. I love Halloween.
Today's episode aired on October 25th, 1990, and as always, Henry will tell us what happened on this mythical day in real world history.
Oh my god!
Oh boy, Bobby. Evander Holyfield defeats Buster Douglas for the heavyweight boxing championship. In Japan, A Wind Named Amnesia is released in theaters, while in American theaters, Mystery Science Theater classic Soul Taker is released.
And that overlaps with the actual run of Mystery Science Theater.
It does, yeah. I never considered that it was like technically contemporary of the Mystery Science Theater.
Joe Estevez, correct?
Yes.
And one of two Robert Zadar movies they did. The other one was, I think, Future War?
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic.
Zadar Zano. I believe Zadar wrote the opening to one of Joe Estevez's books of just like the introduction, and just they were good buddies. Wind Named Amnesia, I remember it being on the box on the shelf, but I actually have never seen that one.
I might have seen it, but I don't remember. That's my little joke.
I don't know if I've seen it. All I know is Amano did the designs.
Yes, yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
but I don't think I've ever seen it. I feel like I've seen a trailer for it on I don't know, Central Park Media, another anime tape or something.
I can imagine seeing the trailer for it ahead of an ACO VHS. Yeah.
Or Angel's Egg.
Yeah. That one,
exactly.
That was another Amano one. I think that one looked more like Amano's designs than Amnesia. The hyper detail worked better in Angel's Egg. I think Amnesia they had to tone down it a little just for budget purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Evander Holyfield beating Buster Douglas before the Buster Douglas boxing video game came out for the Genesis. So.
Oh man, bad timing.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
But Evander, who knows what's happening by the time you listen to this, but in the news recently was Evander Holyfield, because people are talking Mike Tyson in his 50s just had a boxing match, and now people are like, well, what if him and Evander Holyfield had an exhibition match in the next year? Will people actually pay to see that?
People will pay to see anything.
Yeah,
sure.
But hey, welcome back to Ian Jones-Quartey. Woo!
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ian, of course, has been on the show a number of times, but, obviously the creator of the great cartoon OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, and just a fantastic legacy in the world of animation.
Thanks so much. And, I'm really happy to be here on this episode, which is such, an animation highlight for, an early Simpsons episode.
Oh, yeah. And on your shows you worked on, especially OKKO, I think, by your count, had 3 Halloween episodes?
Yeah, I'm just a huge fan of Halloween episodes. I love, just a chance to get spooky with the characters. And I think Simpsons is the standard bearer, I think. Mm-hmm. I didn't work on regular show, but regular show kind of tried to do a Treehouse of Horror style thing as well. Mm-hmm. And I just always when the Simpsons really sort of set the stage of this is something you can do just to have fun with the world and stuff. So it's cool to see this tradition start. Yeah,
your buddy Toby Jones worked on some of those regular show Halloweens. I think those were really great. You're the OKKO one with the characters from Ghoul School was one of my all-time favorite episodes of the whole series.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's another thing. Yeah, similar to The Simpsons. It's like, oh, it's a chance to kind of like have fun with, whatever spooky pop culture stuff you can play with. And yeah, we were just like, we wrote some really nice letters to the Hanna-Barbera people. And we're just like, can we please use these characters you don't care about, but we do?
You also, Ian, really helped me and Bob, I think, appreciate more the early years of the show. Like we talked about this on the first episode, the season 1 we did with you and Toby, and I think it's true for this one too, because it's so early season 2 that they're still finding themselves. But this, like, visually, this is such a great looking episode.
It's a huge step up, and you could tell how much they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And the season 2 episodes really, they benefit clearly from the experience that they've all had in season 1, which they had a rough go at it. Yeah, it's just, I made the argument before that in the same way as comedy nerds, we love to see comedic bits and timing improve from like episode to episode. Seeing it happen to the animation too is like a rare treat. So like, these early episodes are just like, they're so fun to look at.
And 3 of the strongest Simpsons directors are directing on this. This is back when there was a director on each segment.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And also I saw that like the assistant director on all 3 segments is Jim Reardon.
Yeah.
So this is a packed show of directors.
And he'll be directing pretty soon in the season too.
Yeah. This is such a great looking episode. When you compare this to the roughness of, say, Homer's Odyssey, it's wild to think that this aired within the same year for the series.
Yeah, it's very astounding. And yeah, each of the segments, and I have my favorite things within each segment, but they all kind of have their own feel too, which I really like.
Mm-hmm. And also, Ian, I know before we get into Treehouse too, I know you really were a big fan of the Bart Gets an F episode. I was curious, like, what are your thoughts on that one?
Oh yeah, it's actually kind of similar. It's like Bart Gets an F is like one of my favorite episodes, just because you can really feel the show coming into its own. They're like having fun with it being a cartoon, I guess, in a way that's kind of free from them being scared about it being a cartoon, which season 1 kind of has a little bit of friction there. Bart Gets an F, it's like you finally sort of get to see them enjoy the fact that they can kind of do anything. And it's just like one of my favorite shows from The Simpsons. It's almost like a remake of Bart the Genius, but
yeah, it's true.
That's kind of what I like about it, though. It's like, if they could reapproach this Bart storyline with the benefit of like knowing the characters better, knowing the world better, knowing what they can do, it just feels great. And it's got a really good dream sequence part too.
Yeah. And I think Silverman really is like took his game to the next level on that one too. Like compared to Babysitter Bandit, he kind of had to do like a fix-up job on that. But those 2 episodes back to back, him and his team really took a lot of new approaches to the series in that episode.
Yeah, that like pan across the scene in Snow Day.
Yeah,
just like a new achievement for the show at that point in its timeline. Just like you had never seen anything that beautiful or ambitious before on The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's honestly just like gorgeous and amazing. You can really feel that kind of ambition kind of follow through into this episode as well.
And I guess on the production of this one, there's the story they have on the commentary, but we got the inside scoop from Jay Kogan.
We got
our old interview.
The dirt from Kogan. That interview's on our Patreon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, do you want to go into it, Henry?
As Kogan said it, and you can hear the whole thing in our interview. And Kogan is funny because he still is in the entertainment industry, but he really is just like, and I'll just tell. He seems very free with his opinions, I'll say, which I appreciated. But so as he's told the story, say, and Kogan and Wolodarski, they wrote the middle act of this one. He says that it began with Matt Groening coming into the writer's room one day and saying, we should do a Ghost Stories episode.
I think that's how Who Shot Mr. Burns happened, too. He just walks in, says an idea, and they have to make it.
Yeah, he joked around that as they love Matt Groening and he's a genius and all that, but they also said sometimes at the time in the writer's room there was a frustration that he would drop an idea on them and say, well, you guys write this, I'm going away. And I think that he, as he put it, the late Sam Simon wasn't a fan of that idea of just being told, like, do Ghost Stories, and they also were worried that it would be too cartoony, they'd lose the groundedness of the series. But Kogan says him and Wolodarski were really pushing for it. They thought it would be a lot of fun to like break format and do these crazy stories. And Kogan said a big reason they were able to sell Simon on doing the show was that Sam Simon got into the idea of like, well, what if we did The Raven? Like, that's such a famous poem, I love it. And Kogan, who said like nobody knows The Raven, he doesn't particularly care for The Raven, but he's like, yeah, no, The Raven, let's do it. Yeah.
And it does feel like we'll get into it when we get to the segment. It does feel like they had something to prove with that segment for sure.
Yeah. It's fun to see them like do something so earnest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which they, well, and you hear on the commentary though, they were like scared to be that earnest. They're fighting themselves the whole scene, I think, as it aired.
But this is really first. This is the first like breaking of the rules, right? That James L. Brooks put down. Like, no, real family, real circumstances, and then we have a crazy Halloween episode.
and also Kogan said it's not a joke that they have the thing at the start with Marge. Like, they were legitimately concerned they'd terrify children with it. So comparatively though, when you see this one, it is kind of like Bart's joke later. Like the first one isn't very scary by comparison.
Yeah, that is really true.
And also, though, on the commentary, I really, the next time, if we're ever able to interview David Silverman again, this is another one on my list. But like on the commentary, he lightly touches on how incredibly stressful doing this episode was. And I'd really like to hear more about it because they kind of like gloss over it on the commentary.
They are like really punchy and actually kind of rude about the animation on this. I don't know what's their like last commentary of the day. I don't know what was happening in 2001 or 2002 when they were doing this, but yeah, they're just like a little too snippy about this.
Yeah, I mean, watching the Simpsons commentaries was always like such inspiration for me when they existed, but man, it was always like a bummer when you wanted to hear, oh, this is what like the animators went through, and you just never got any of it.
I know, like on a few times there's just like straight up insulting the animation, and Mike Reese is like, we were so impressed by this when it came back, and he's talking about the portal in the haunted house segment. He says, now this looks like an ambitious washing machine, and I'm like, man, like, isn't David Silverman in the room?
I know. Yeah, when I started listening to the commentaries, as a man in his 20s, I really just liked all the fun stories about the writer's room stuff, and I was just like, man, it sounds so fun to be a Hollywood comedy writer, all those things. But now as I listen to them for like the 8 millionth time for the podcast, I am thinking like the animators should have a separate commentary. I want to hear them just talk about their craft separate from the other fun stories that the writers are kind of dominate on the commentaries.
Yeah, I mean, not to get all curmudgeonly here, but there is like, people have a lot to say about the division of writers and animators and who gets more spotlight and who gets more credit and who appreciates who, and I think the thing is, writers and animators are both groups of creative people who feel undervalued. So when it comes down to it, the writers are more likely to like dominate the conversation.
Well, they're usually outnumbering the animators in the recording room too. But as the story went, that it was a very difficult season 2 for the directors, because in Silverman in particular, he became official series director, but also still had 5 episodes, and so did Wes Archer, and so did Rich Moore. And then they're told, also, you're going to direct a third of another episode as well.
And they only hired 2 more directors, right? They only hired Reardon and Kirkland, right?
Yeah. And it sounded really rough. Like Silverman just says, like, I don't know how we got it done, but we did. and I'll also shout out our friend Warren on his podcast, Simpsons is Better Than. In his Wes Archer interview, like Archer mentioned specifically the overwork that included this episode on season 2 led him to like briefly quit the series because he was just feeling just way too much. That casts a little bit of a shadow on Treehouse that I think, now 30 years removed, we can just appreciate it as just, a great job done by all the artists involved. But
and now it's normally a holdover episode from the previous season, so they have more time to work on it. It's not like the first or second production episode for a season.
That factoid is really funny to me, knowing that Wes Archer would end up directing on Rick and Morty, maybe one of the most design-intensive shows I've ever seen.
And he's like 30 years older now.
Oh, man. Maybe his heart's been hardened so much more since then, man.
But we do have one superstar to talk about before we get into this. So finally, we have the debut of Alf Clausen on The Simpsons. So we all know Alf. It's going to be a little like mini corner for him on this podcast. Honestly, we could do a series about him. We could do an entire podcast about him. We're not going to give him enough justice, but he is essential to The Simpsons, in fact. So I had one of the DVDs in, and I was like, what are the extras on here? And one of them was, The Simpsons get their Walk of Fame star. And it's just like a cheesy PR thing with Matt Groening and James L. Brooks giving a little speech. And they're, getting little shots of people in the crowd. And Matt Groening comes up to Alf Clausen. And on camera, he's like, this guy is the secret weapon of The Simpsons. It's all this guy. So it makes me even sadder to think that he's not on the show anymore and hasn't been for 3 years.
Yeah. At the time of this recording, there's like a very sticky lawsuit going on after Alf's leaving the show, let's say.
And so Richard Gibbs is gone. Is it Richard Gibbs? It is Richard Gibbs.
Yeah, it's more than one Gibb.
And then they would try out 2 other composers after him, and one of them will be back in the next episode because this is the 4th production episode, and the next one is actually the 3rd production episode.
Okay.
So like 1, 2, and 3 are not Alf Clausen, but 4 and onward is Alf Clausen.
I mean, you hear the music in this episode, especially in the second segment. I just think this is why he got hired. When you hear the scoring of stuff happening on screen, to so much silence, it's just perfect. His instincts just fit for the show. Clausen was an amazing hire for them. I mean, the show would still be going, I would think, at least into many seasons, production wise. They'd get some other composer, but his backing track of all these moments really do matter quite a lot.
Yeah, and especially in The Raven, the music is so good in that segment. It really sells it.
Yeah, hearing this episode, it's clear why they needed Alf to sell everything about it. Honestly, yeah, like you said, Henry, the second segment, it's like the fact that we got we got Kang and Kodo's theme out of it, which is so recurring and so important. You just think of that music when you see the characters. It's a really good showcase of his skills. If this was his audition, I'd say he nailed it.
So I can talk about where he came from. Like the composer on Simpson and Delilah, he also came from the TV sitcom composing trenches, and his first work was composing cues for a few episodes of Maude. So that's where he began. A few episodes of Maude, and his 2 big jobs for The Simpsons were he was the series composer for both Alf, Alf Clausen wrote the music for Alf, and for Moonlighting. So I want to say the last guy was a guy in the Mary Tyler Moore-verse. He composed for Mary Tyler Moore and Lou Grant and Rhoda. So
a lot of Brooks work.
I'm sure Brooks found him, but I want to say probably Gina Reese was like, oh, we worked with Alf Clausen and he was great. Let's try Alf out. So I want to say there's got to be a connection there.
You'd think, the Alf connection of Gordon Shumway, I should say, the Gordon Shumway connection.
And so outside of scoring The Critic, Bette Midler's short-lived early 2000s sitcom, and weirdly enough, the movie Half Baked, The Simpsons was his life for the last 30 years. That is not an error. I double-checked. That can't be true.
I did not know that Half Baked thing.
That's a really an amazing career, but it makes total sense. in a way.
And I don't want to rehash the lawsuit because it's ugly and it makes me sad. And, he's having some, health problems that come with aging. But who scores the show now is a company called Bleeding Fingers Music. And Hans Zimmer owns that company. So essentially it's like a music production company. I'm sure they do good work and, their cues are fine. But you do miss like the singular musical vision of one composer writing everything. So it's not this. It can't be the same and it won't be the same.
Well, and Clausen had, usually at least some. When I say full orchestra, I don't know like the number of members of it, but it was live instrumentation usually he was writing for, which was special back then and still is, and that the Simpsons, I believe, with losing Alf, they also lost live instrumentation. I think that's true. Yeah, that hurts it too. But that's also it's a budget thing, and budget crunch happens to all of these shows, even one as big as the Simpsons. Which I hope everything, everybody just mellows out and things get nice between Alf and the company. It's a really sad, like some ugly dirty laundry is coming out on what people feel in that.
I mean, I hope we at least get an in memory of when he passes away. If they snub him, I'll be very upset.
No, that would be. I would think they're classy enough to do that.
Hopefully.
but yeah, I mean, you just hear his music in this, and it's like it's a huge step up from season one. Like season one depends so much on these just big stings, like just these.
Yes, the famous Gibbs things that we all screamed about. Yeah. Oh, that Babysitter Bandit episode. Can't deal with it anymore.
When I think of Alf Clausen, I mostly think of like there's a bunch of like incidental themes that he added to the show, which really kind of deepened the thing, like character themes. There's like a nice rhythm to a lot of the pieces of music that kind of like get you in the mood for like, here comes a joke, like, cutting to the Simpsons and you just hear that sort of like, and you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's just, this is the start of a scene kind of music. And not to mention the show from season 2 onward, really season 3, like it becomes a much more musical show, just like songs upon songs that even if it is, Jeff Martin, writes it too, like even Martin would be, I think, the first to say like Clausen's orchestration of his compositions really took them up a notch too.
And think of how many versions of the ending theme he wrote. Just the instrumental versions, all the different variants on those. He was so talented.
Yeah, and they're all amazing, and you feel like the reverence for like the original Danny Elfman song and trying to sort of like make it work in almost any situation. It feels really good.
Yeah, you're right. He found like these tones of the Elfman opening too and expanded on those or used that as starting points for so many other themes in the show too. Yeah, I think of like what's the music sting for like Burns being evil or even like his version of Sideshow Bob's theme, which is just the Cape Fear theme, but like
it's legally distinct.
Yeah.
It feels weird that it's not there now, or like you hear like some library uses of some of the stuff, but like I recall like, the Simpsons movie has this completely different feel, and it doesn't, quite feel like Simpsons music.
I think Hans Zimmer did the score for that movie, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's good to see him join the crew.
Yeah, it's a really good like 25 years for him. And
yeah, his last episode that he was credited on is season 29's Whistler's Father, so I think like 27, 28 years, something like that. Yep.
The Simpsons will be right back.
Thursday.
For the whole this year.
Welcome to the Simpsons Tales of Halloween.
Hello? Something scary happening.
From a haunted house.
Do it again.
No.
Do the blood thing. Come on, do it. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it.
To outer space.
There's something not quite right about this.
The girl's right. Let's get some applesauce out here for these pork chops.
You'll laugh till you scream. The Simpsons Halloween Special, Thursday on Fox.
Quote the Raven Nevermore on this week's episode. And thanks so much to everybody for listening. And a big thank you to our guest this week, Ian Jones-Quartey. We always love having him on, especially for such a landmark episode as the first Treehouse of Horror. Please, if you haven't yet, check out his series OKKO Let's Be Heroes. It's on HBO Max and Hulu currently, and I think you will have a whole lot of fun if you like The Simpsons. Also, a big thank you to all of our supporters at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You see, me and Bob are able to do podcasts like this every week thanks to the support of the listeners on there who pledge $5 a month and help me and Bob do it as our full-time jobs. Those people also get tons of extras every month. You get a giant back catalog of amazing exclusive podcast miniseries, us covering shows like The Critic, Futurama, King of the Hill, and Mission Hill. And each month you'll get a new episode of our Talking Futurama podcast as we're going through season 3. And you'll also, in March, start getting our newest Talking of the Hill podcast where we cover season 2. And a huge back catalog of extras to go with it as well. Please sign up at $5 a month to help me and Bob do this as our full-time jobs and to get tons of extra podcasts. And you know something even fancier than radish rosettes? That's our premium level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You get all of the $5 stuff I just mentioned, but for $10 a month, you get a big premium extra podcast. Each week, we do our What a Cartoon podcast on the free feeds. But if you are a $10 subscriber, you get access to our monthly What a Cartoon movie podcast, where we cover an animated feature film in depth to the same degree that we cover The Simpsons. Recent films include the Studio Ghibli classic Whisper of the Heart, Dexter's Lab, Ego Trip, End of Evangelion, and coming this month, the DuckTales movie from 1990. We had so much fun, and you will too if you listen to those over 100 hours of original What a Cartoon Movie content you'll get behind that paywall for $10 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. So please sign up today. Last thing I want to say too is I did find out there was one. I do think Groening came with the Ghost Story thing partially as an expansion of Tracy Ullman shorts.
Oh, right, yeah.
In season 2, there was one called Scary Stories, where it's Bart, Lisa, and Maggie telling each other scary stories that involve turning off the light switch. And I do think it came from, I've seen other interviews where Groening goes like, he wrote several Ullman shorts that were like, and then the characters are in the dark and you just have to draw eyeballs.
It's the floating eyeball show.
Yeah. But so I think this is another one. It's hard to even think of like, oh yeah, this is an expansion of a shorts thing, because the shorts are just, they're lost to time. We thought that in our Bill Kopp interview, that it's just such a sad thing that like they're not really archived anywhere or just like off of Comedy Central recording.
The best possible version were like mid-90s Comedy Central recordings. After that, like they're just nowhere, and they deserve a Blu-ray release.
Totally.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. This is where one of the most important cartoons of all time came from. Mm-hmm. You can't bury your past. Even the KTMA episodes of Mystery Science Theater are all out now.
Yeah.
They stopped sitting on them.
I think, when you're on the inside of a production like this, you don't value those foundational blocks as much as maybe people on the outside, like fans, do. So I guess I can understand why they wouldn't want to sell it, especially, but at the height of physical media, they really should have done it. They would have gotten us all to buy an extra DVD set that year.
They could have sold like millions of them, just like things you've never seen, or they only aired once or whatever, just like the lost episodes, call it that.
Yeah. Man, lie to me. I don't care.
In 2003, they'd have sold so many.
God.
Oh, man.
There'd be an entire shelf at Best Buy just for that. I want to go over two things up front about this episode that bother me about the Halloween show. So number one, it's called Treehouse of Horror, not Treehouse of Horrors. And I see people right at the second time all the time, including Al Jean when he was tweeting about it this year's special. He called it Treehouse of Horrors.
I mean, it makes more sense to be horrors.
It does.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, Vault of Horror was the comic.
Yes. Yeah,
so I think that's why it's named after that, or that's why the title is like that. So yeah, Treehouse of Horror, problem number 1, people get that wrong. Problem number 2, this is the only one that takes place in the treehouse, so the title doesn't make sense. And problem number 3 is the title screen says The Simpsons Halloween Special.
Yeah.
So it has to, everyone has 2 different titles every year. It frustrates me, that's all. For someone who likes things to be orderly, I'm like, everything about this is wrong. I guess it's part of the horror, right?
Yeah, it's unnerving, Bob. It's the nevermore for you.
I demand organization in this show.
Well, it does fit with their dual naming of the Christmas episode as well. It's the Simpsons Christmas special and also Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire. It is interesting to think about that eventually Treehouse just ascended to the official thing they call it on the show. Like they stopped calling it the Simpsons Halloween special and they accepted like the internal name is known enough by the fans that they just call it that.
I can't remember, do they actually put Treehouse of Horror on the screen now?
I definitely think on Treehouse 30 they said Treehouse 30 Treehouses or something. They talked about it on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that they had like 2 titles for it. I guess these things happen, and then the fans started knowing about it, and now you can't back away from it. It's like Snake and Jailbird and stuff like that.
I mean, the thinking was like, well, no one will ever see these titles. Maybe the week it comes out on in TV Guide, you'll see it, but that's it. But they didn't know about like DVDs or streaming or whatever when you're like scrolling through and looking at the titles.
We were supposed to just watch these once and forget about them.
And watch all the commercials. Pay attention to those.
Yeah. Don't be a freak like Homer remembering old TV.
We actually, so when we talked to John Vitti, who wrote, did he write any segments in this one? No. But
Not this one.
He's a writer on this season, in that, like, one of the King of the Hill episodes is called John Vitti Presents Return to La Grunta, as a joke on him for not being there during a rewrite. But now that is preserved on Hulu, on DVDs, in every airing you see, his name is there, and it's inexplicable, and we found out what it was.
Amazing.
This episode, though, begins with Marge's disclaimer. Here, I'll play the quick clip to also warn our audience that this will be very scary.
Hello, everyone. Halloween is a very strange holiday. Personally, I don't understand it. Kids worshiping ghosts, pretending to be devils. Things on TV that are completely inappropriate for younger viewers. Things like the following half hour. Nothing seems to bother my kids, but tonight's show, which I totally wash my hands of, is really scary. So if you have sensitive children, maybe you should tuck them into bed early tonight instead of writing us angry letters tomorrow. Thanks for your attention.
They don't do it every year, but it's fun whenever it comes back, the Marge warning.
And that is a parody of the opening of the 1931 version of Frankenstein, and we have a clip of the important part of that opening.
It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the 2 great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you.
Oh, no.
So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, we've warned you.
I love that. Well,
yep.
We warned you. That's good. And he's in front of a stage with a curtain on it. Just
presumably
like
it's a red curtain.
Yeah.
And this is just one of the examples of the show. Season 2, they're really working through the controversy, and I think they're done with it by season 3. They're just having more fun with it. But yeah, like a Simpson on a T-shirt, I never thought I'd see the day.
Right.
This opening about getting the angry letters, the way the Raven, I think, is trying to be like, no, see, we're actually an educational cartoon. We can teach your kids something. Yeah. I think that's part of it too.
And Bart gets an F as the underachiever and proud of it thing too. Yeah.
And they're writing this like probably in January of 1990.
Maybe by the time season 2, like they're partway through that, they're on Thursday, the ratings are getting lower. Maybe they're all thinking like, we worked on Alf, now the fad's over. We can relax some.
I guess you can feel them kind of responding. Yeah, or like maybe almost overcorrecting to what they think the audience is gonna think, but it just comes off as so quaint and cute now.
Yes, yeah. And also them putting Marge in this position to be the Warner and like a prude almost. It fits with the Itchy and Scratchy and Marge, which will come later this season too. I will say when I watched it as a kid, like it didn't scare my mom off from letting me watch it, and I think actually my brother and I took pride in that, like, oh, we're like Bart and Lisa. She says that it doesn't bother her kids, and it doesn't bother us either. We're just like the cartoon character.
That's funny.
I mean, did your parents, Bob, see this and worry that you'd be scared by it or something?
I think we watched it together. I have memories of watching the, at least up through like season 5 or 6, watching them all with my parents when they were live.
There's no way my parents would have approved of this at all. They were like against me watching The Simpsons in general. I don't know if I saw this until probably not syndication. It might have reran like shortly after. I don't think I was there live for this one.
I think by the 4th year that when they had enough for a 2-hour block, they would just do a marathon of it. I think so. Maybe that was it in the rerunning of it.
And we're talking about how this show almost killed all the directors. One of the super ambitious things I noticed up front is just it's a bunch of zooms into the house. I mean, it's broken apart. The cuts are when the lightning flashes, so there are cheats, but still just the constant zoom across the landscape, like to the Simpsons house, passing like tombstones and whatnot. Way cool, like super stylized and awesome.
Yeah. Oh, the zoom in, and then with Snowball 2 like hissing at the screen.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a cool shot.
Yeah, it's all the like camera truck-ins and zooms are really impressive, and like the only digitally aided zoom is like the title, Simpsons Halloween Special title. Like around the same time, like I think like Hanna-Barbera was doing this digitally, like all like zooms and stuff like that. So to see them do it all like in camera is like very, very impressive.
And no scary Halloween names at the start of this one.
No, you still have the hideous green font that just takes up the entire screen. And Henry, how did you feel about Garfield being listed amongst the dead?
I don't know why they got something out for Garfield there. Is it that they hate Garfield and want him to go away? Is that it?
Garfield and Friends was huge in 1990.
And I thought of them as equals in 1990. 8-year-old me was like, Garfield and Simpsons, the 2 best shows on television.
They both hold the mirror up to society.
Yeah.
It seems kind of, it's just sort of random because like all the other ones kind of fit the theme, and then it's just you have Garfield, which is great.
And I don't think we mentioned no creepy names either. No parody names either.
Well, and in 2 years, Garfield animators will be doing Simpsons episodes when they go to Film Roman for season 4.
Right, that's true.
Homer is basically a taller Garfield.
And Casper the Friendly Boy, that was a good joke. I like it better in the disco. It's like we get it, disco's dead. Got it. But
it made me think of how the Casper movie, which I remember liking, actually went into the backstory of the child who died to become Casper.
Yes, yeah, that was so weird. Like, it's Christina Ricci asks him like, "How'd you die?" or "What did death feel like?" That was heavy for me as a tween watching that.
I was just looking at Christina Ricci as a tween. And written by Sherry Stoner, that movie.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're gonna do a Casper movie, like where do you go? I think that's it. How did Casper die? That's what we all want to know.
They're the questions we've always had. It's just like, this Casper joke presages the better Casper joke at the end of this season. One of my all-time favorites. A dark joke, to be sure.
And even Marge is like, lighten up, kids.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you lighten up a little? Yeah.
I also noticed Cornelius V. Simpson, which seems like a reference to Cornelius Vanderbilt, the great grandfather of Anderson Cooper and Timothy Oliphant.
Oh wow!
And the Vanderbilt fortune. I guess he's the start of it there. But the episode then begins properly with Homer going trick-or-treating, which this, even as a child, did confuse me. I thought, did the kids go trick-or-treating earlier and then Homer went alone, or are they going to do it later? Like, why would the kids not go trick-or-treating to get free candy?
I've always had that question. They're missing out on valuable trick-or-treating time.
I like the idea that Homer went on his own.
Yes, he didn't chaperone the kids. He's like,
and we have like three. So we have they have more time to kill because the shows were longer back then. But we have the intro with Marge, we have the credit sequence, and then we have the wraparounds with the Treehouse. So like a lot of time is passing from the beginning until the first segment.
I like how they had the time to do the wraparounds, which they drop really soon in these Halloween shows. But it is fun to give like a little bit of context to what's going on. But the way you mentioned the shorts, the way that the wraparounds kind of end up, it is kind of evocative of the Simpsons shorts, maybe like the Goodnight Simpsons one.
Yeah, well, anytime the kids hang out together and just be kids like that's when it feels more shortsy too. And also you do have Wes and Silverman directing these two of the three segments, and they are the shorts originators. I think of Homer. Remember the Christmas special? He described himself like, "I'm just a big kid." Like that.
And
that
I love
fits.
Christmas so much.
So he also still loves Halloween.
Homer the holiday lover. That's what he's known for.
But yes, Homer wants to see what the kids are up to.
Ooh, what a haul this year. I love Halloween. Wait a minute. Let's see what the kids are up to.
And the policeman on the other end of the phone said, "We have traced a call. It's coming from the floor below you. Get out of the house." But it was too late. End of story.
Yawn. I heard that when I was in the 3rd grade. It's not scary.
Is two.
Is not.
Is two.
Is not.
Is two.
Is not.
Fine. Then you tell one scarier.
Flashlight, please. Here's a story that's really scarifying.
Oh, brother.
I call it Bad Treehouse.
Great music.
Yeah. The first, just hearing the music there, yeah. But yeah, actually thinking more about the shorts, the way Lisa says like, "Oh, brother," like that is a real like end of a shorts scene kind of thing too. But I also noticed that like Edgar Allan Poe gets like writer credit in this. It's not adaptation. Yeah. Like it seems like Sam Simon decided like I'm sharing credit with Edgar Allan Poe on this.
He's being cute about it.
That's very fun. Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of Poltergeist in this segment, but I think it's more Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
And that's a series that nobody even thinks about, but the 5th movie came out the summer before this episode, the 5th Amityville Horror movie. And there's a tiny bit of Shining here too.
Yeah, I noticed, there's a little bit of Shining in there, so it's weird thinking about this episode. In my memory, the Shining always kind of like slots in there too.
Yeah,
you do get Homer with an axe though, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same shot as before. Yeah, the Poltergeist stuff always struck me more in this because I even watched Amityville Horror eventually, like in the late 90s, because I, as a Simpsons mega fan, I was like, I probably should know this one since it's such a key reference to it. But it's such a forgettable movie, and it's also like based on it was like one of the first like based on a true story horror films, but it's all BS.
Based on a famous hoax.
Yeah. But like, the based on a true story is like a family said their walls were bleeding. All right, well, let's make that into a movie.
I'm sure it happened.
This one's written by Swartzwelder, which I definitely can feel that in like the Marge is a real nag and Homer is just like, come on, don't be. It's also a great crazy episode for sure. But they also animate the titles on these. It's not in post like for all 3 segments, which is an impressive choice. I guess. Well, let's talk about the big guest star in this episode, and I will play the always respectful anti-death jingle here.
Jim Buzzards, I ain't dead yet.
Yeah, so James Earl Jones, and he plays a character in every segment, and it's very distracting when he's not Sarek the Preparer.
Yes, yeah. James Earl Jones, a living legend at 89 right now. I mean, it's redundant to say, but he's an incredible talent, like one of the best actors of his generation with a voice that is unforgettable.
And I think he was one of the first actors to actually be credited in the credits with their real name.
Yeah.
Harvey Fierstein, I think, is the first.
He was the first, and then James Earl Jones right after, yeah.
He's a great like addition of texture to this whole thing. You know, you feel like this is an extra special episode because of that.
And he gets the joke. Like, he's a really good, like, he's, especially in the second act, he is he's good at playing along with them and for the comedy of the scenes.
Oh yeah, I'll say like the only distracting one is when he's the mover.
Yes,
like, this mover sounds like James Earl Jones, Marge.
It is very distracting. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, we all grew up with him as like, you know, Darth Vader and Mufasa. But I also say, if people haven't seen it, his Oscar-winning performance in The Great White Hope, which was a film adaptation of a Broadway play he originated, he's amazing in that. Also, it was filmed for the Tonys. He originated the role of Troy in Fences,
right?
And which Denzel Washington would then play in the film adaptation and in a 2010 Broadway revival. He is amazing. Like, look up his Tony performance of it. It's incredible. Like, he's still active. He was Darth Vader just a few years ago in Rogue One. I guess he was Mufasa in the live action Lion King. Live action in quotes Lion King as well.
Oh, they kept him? Okay, cool.
Yes, yeah, I believe he was the only guy that came back.
I mean, you can't really replace him as Mufasa. That would be impossible.
So the family's moving into a brand new house. Homer stiffs the James Earl Jones voiced mover on a tip. Google says you should pay a mover $5. You should tip $5 for every hour they worked for you. That's what Google says about tipping movers.
Yeah, I have nothing to say about movers except hire movers.
Yes.
If you're out there and you're like, I can move without movers, just do it.
If you're not in your 20s anymore, hire a mover.
Yeah, my last move I did like 3 years ago. When I did finally pay movers, I was like, what have I been doing my whole life? To save $200, I like broke my back and just like
and a lot of your things.
Yeah, and tortured my friends by being like, I'll get you pizza, just help me move. It's like, no, if you can afford it, get movers. It's worth it. Every dollar is worth it, whatever you pay. And so yes, they're moving in. Homer mentions that it was a motivated seller that got them in there. And there's some great visual gags. I love the books putting themselves back in the box as soon as Bart removes them. Though I did notice a weird shot in it when Marge says, like, what on earth was that? Like, a table leg fully obscures her. It's an odd choice on the framing of that shot. Marge heads into the kitchen. She sees the bleeding walls, and that's when they see the vortex, which I think it looks good.
It looks good.
It looks good.
It looks really good. I don't know what they're on the commentary. It's got like this in camera sort of shimmer over it.
It's a cool effect.
It's incredibly like difficult to do. It looks awesome, and it's got this like gradient as it goes in. It's very impressive.
And the way the orange turns into a flash of light that disappears, like that's like an anime explosion effect. It's so cool looking. I think the vortex is a Poltergeist reference. I think that like they open there's a door with a vortex in it after the little girl gets eaten. And
yeah, I was getting Poltergeist from that.
And I also like that he gets something thrown back saying stop throwing. The people in the other end, they know a vortex exists and they just don't want crap. They're not interested in figuring out who's on the other side of it. They're just
sick of all the littering.
And so they come back into the room. Bart is floating in the air, being choked by floating things.
I like that makes Homer angry. He's like, let's see you talk your way out of this one, boy.
I love that. Which there's no way you can blame Bart for what's happening there, but Homer is ready to be like, this is obviously Bart's doing.
That feels like a very Swartzwelder touch, that line.
Oh man, Swartzwelder is totally understanding Homer in this one. I think this is the episode, maybe the episode where Dan really figures out Homer. Like he has to scream so much in this that I think he really gets Homer in this one.
Yeah, the Homer voice felt like almost fully formed. I would say, definitely in the Raven segment, it's like it definitely gets like pushed as far as it'll go, at least for like a while, and it all feels like the character we know.
Homer, especially, I think the nuttiness of the Treehouse gets Homer to scream so much more that I wonder if that's what pushed Castle and Ed to be like, Walter Matthau just has to go away entirely from this voice. I can't do it this much screaming and keep that.
No more Jackie Gleason either.
Yeah. But yes, Marge isn't liking all this, and Homer is trying to convince her to stay.
I can feel an evil presence in this house.
Evil?
Quiet, Lisa. You're scaring your mother.
Children, get your coats. We're leaving this house right now.
Now, wait a minute, Marge. It's only natural there'd be some things wrong with an old house like this. It's a fixer-upper. What's the problem? We get a bunch of priests in here.
I'm not going to live in a house of evil just to save a few dollars.
Don't be so stubborn. We're not talking about a few dollars. We're talking about a few $1,000. Oh, it's got great high ceilings. Tell you what, let's sleep on it, okay?
All right. But if anything happens...
What could happen?
I think this was the one that creeped me out the most as a kid. It didn't scare me, but just like how the Simpsons almost kill each other, and also the music. I remember that really creeping me out as a kid because I had never heard anything like that before.
Yeah.
Also, one of the best things about these like earlier Simpsons is like seeing the characters suddenly become like three-dimensional. Like you get so much of that in this in this segment too, with them all floating around. You really kind of get to feel like Homer go like towards and away from camera in like, a fun way that maybe they wouldn't do in a normal episode. It's really fun to look at.
They're having to figure out a lot of new angles to portray them from because they've never floated before in the series. I love, and also like it is a very Swartzweldery touch of Homer is literally flying through the air like it's already metaphysical, but Homer's still like, what could happen? Nothing's going on. Let's just sleep on it. I especially just love his like when he gets up to the top after saying there's great high ceilings. Was that so ADR? But it's just full on scream and then fall. So funny to me. And especially like very Wes Archery like mouths on him as he's screaming. It's so funny. I also think it's another Poltergeist reference of Lisa feeling the evil presence, the little girl doing it. Though I guess really Maggie is more the little girl from Poltergeist as the youngest sister. But yeah, I just Homer saying like, "Don't be so stubborn." Like, God, also good. But yeah, and another like great cartoony drawing. Like after Homer hits the ground, his face squished into the ground. Is such a funny drawing too.
Yeah, it feels like the way his head squishes back to normal maybe happened a little slower than it was supposed to, but it looks amazing.
That's part of the curse of the house that's doing that.
It's affecting physics.
But yes, it's night in the house. Everything's getting scary. There's when you see in Lisa's window the tree outside, that's another kind of poltergeisty reference. Just the scary tree outside, but not that it does anything. But there's another one that's like clearly ADR, but I really love it, of when the house is talking to Bart and he says, "Are you my conscience?" That's really great.
I really want a cell of just like Lisa holding the knife.
Oh, yeah.
Just out of context, it's very funny.
Just her pull it when he says, "The butcher knife, Lisa," and she just pulls it all out like it was in this giant butcher knife was sitting by her bed.
Just running her finger along the blade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her eyes are just like completely dead.
The animators, now it's we've seen the Simpsons and Halloween specials do the craziest stuff, but imagine the animators who, are just in the second season. They're like, we get to draw Lisa holding a knife and trying to kill someone. Like, that is fun. Like, that is a very new experience for them.
Like the show debuted less than a year ago.
You feel like the organic fun of them blowing off a little steam here. But it is mandatory fun because they were told to do all this stuff. But, you see them have fun with it.
And there's even a bit of Maggie walking around with a knife in her mouth.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, a little knife.
Yeah, and that's where Homer is holding up the axe in a Shining or Shinning reference there. And I also like the silliness of Marge. Marge is, I'm in the kitchen, Homer. Like, it makes, why did she say it like that when she's not crazy and she's making a sandwich?
I love that mislead.
Especially like as it cuts to all of them. I mean, just amazing shots of all of them laughing and cackling.
Like walking in a circle, like stalking each other. That's a great shot.
And then it cuts to Marge bringing a knife down and it then being a sandwich. Like that's a really good joke. But yes, Marge has to prevent a knife fight.
Die, everybody die.
What's going on out here? Homer, Bart, Lisa, Maggie, stop it.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Bart.
Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Meg.
Oh, that does it. Children, get dressed. We're leaving.
Oh, come on, Marge. You said you'd sleep on it.
I don't care what I said. This family has had its differences, and we've squabbled, but we never had knife fights before. And I blame this house.
Mom, Dad, look.
I like how out of nowhere that is. Just she just suddenly finds it in that scene, the Indian burial ground, as they call it.
She opens the door and just like, let's look down in the basement.
I just love their very conversational getting out of killing each other.
Yes.
Just being like, oh, sorry about that.
Once the spell is broken, they're like, no, sorry. In Poltergeist, the realtors do a lot more work to hide the native burial ground, but
it's just there with headstones.
Which,
like Christian headstones.
Yeah, which that leads to a funny thing on the commentary. My favorite reveal. We talk about the stress between animator and writer on this. Mike Reese tells the story that there's Crazy Horse and Not So Crazy Horse tombstones in there. When the animation came back and other producers saw it, they were like, these animators adding these bad jokes, we're mad. And then Reese on the 2001 commentary reveals that was actually his joke that he had sent to as requested by the animators to put a sign gag in there. He sent him that, and when it came back and they blamed the animators, he just let it happen in silence and did not take credit for it.
And on that commentary, he finally confessed. It's 18 years ago.
At least he made it clear at last.
And you could tell
that story was insane. And also the joke, it's fine.
Yeah, it's cheesy, but yeah, like I feel like they're also learning what a sign gag can be and how it should be displayed, because you're like, some of these you can't read because the people buried in the graveyard are Tonto, Mahatma Gandhi, and then we did Crazy Horse, Not So Crazy Horse, but the camera scans past two. Cochise and Hiawatha are also buried there.
Oh man, I didn't even catch those.
But just like the camera pans across the graves really quick and then freezes, so like you have to catch it in the pan. You have to like freeze frame.
Yeah, I think they definitely were learning better. I mean, we're past the barely legible signs of Candy Most Dandy. They're getting better at it, but. But yes, that leads to one. Dan is just he's an Emmy winner this whole episode, I think.
I want to meet Mr. Plute.
Yes, yeah. This one-sided phone call here is fantastic.
Mr. Plute, Homer Simpson here. When you sold me this house, you forgot to mention one little thing. You didn't tell me it was built on an Indian burial ground. No, you didn't. Well, that's not my recollection. Yeah, well, all right, goodbye. He says he mentioned it 5 or 6 times.
Let's go, children.
Oh, gee, Marge.
Homer?
Yep. That's great. Yeah, he's really stretching in the Homer voice.
Yeah. Oh, God, this is like Indian burial ground.
And that one's a direct reference to Poltergeist, right?
Yes.
Isn't it? Like, Poltergeist is like, you son of a bitch, you only moved the headstones. Or like,
yes,
something like that.
Yeah.
Or like, you moved the cemetery, but not the headstones.
And they just, it's an actual reveal that his boss lied and didn't, but in this case, Homer, when he was touring the place, was told many times that what he was buying, and now he
wasn't listening.
That's why I love when they write Homer as this like for this whole segment. He's a dumb dad who's proud of this deal he got, and as his deal falls apart and is clearly not as good as he thought, he is defending it at every turn. That's a funny place to put Homer in for the whole sequence. As the house reveals itself and just starts like full on talking to them, there's some, again, great animation, like of the backgrounds, like the house moving in different, like it's like split level backgrounds and stuff.
The house is kind of like breathing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the all the like palette changes on the walls as they like start moving and stuff. It's like really, really fun.
Yeah, and to do again, like to think that there be notes on this animation when you think like ACOM overseas is doing so much with this in their second year on the show and their first real full season on the show. It's incredible they pulled this off. But yeah, as the house is threatening them, and this I'm complimenting Dan, but also Julie Kavner really brings it in this next clip.
You will die. You will die slowly. Your stomach will swell. Your intestines will writhe and boil. Your eyes will burst, and some horrible stuff, possibly your brains, will start coming out through your nose.
Shut up! Quit trying to push us around! Stop saying those horrible things and show some manners! Look at me. I've never been so angry. My hands are shaking.
Better than your eyes bursting.
But yeah, just her like scream, like Julie having to scream that much in the Marge voice is another big push for her.
You've never heard her that angry before.
Yeah.
And maybe since.
Yeah, it's a nice fun turn on the story with that she like tears the house a new one kind of.
Yeah. And the house actually like kind of draws back, like he got scared by Marge. And I also like that he's the house is kind of making up things as he goes, like probably your eyes. It's just so good. And then as the house kind of calms down, I like how Bart and Lisa play with it in different ways. Like Bart wants him to just do tricks for him while Lisa is trying to get in touch, like analyze the house, and the house refuses to be analyzed.
Leave me alone.
Yeah. I
like how it goes from trying to scare them just being annoyed by them.
Yeah. And also then Marge it's like, hey, don't call me lady. And also another great like pose as she threatens the house and says they're gonna have to live together. And then she goes with like, please, like there's really good like posing, like her looking up at the ceiling and her when she says please, like you can see this little pause in her like, please. Like, yeah, it's really good just posing on him there.
Yeah, and I love how we're getting into the whole early series joke of the Simpson family is so horrible, which I think is also kind of playing off of some expectations that they thought the audience would have too.
Oh yeah. This is kind of, they expand on it with the monkey's paw, like that is the monkey paw is the last big thing of them talking about how the show is annoying and people hate it. They give the house an ultimatum, they head outside, and the house says, I feel like there's some hard cuts here, like there's so much ADR, and I think it's really in 1 and 3
that bitchin' is an ADR thing. Like what if Bart swore more?
It's great.
Yeah,
it feels like Bart saying bitchin' out of nowhere.
It feels like it was cut from another episode or something, like an existing Bart clip.
It might be.
It taught me the word. Hearing Bart say it did teach 8-year-old me that's a word you can say. And that it's again another. I think the house in Amityville doesn't disappear. The Poltergeist one definitely implodes on itself, and in the movie is a really good bit of like just special effects. But in this case, it is like self-inflicted death by the house on itself rather than be with the Simpsons. And again, Archer and his team, they should be so proud of what they did with that like house implosion. Like whoever animated that, like above and beyond there.
It's so neat. Yeah.
Yeah, the segment is gorgeous. And yeah, like Bob said, it is like kind of creepy. And I think a lot of that does come from you really feel like you're in this setting and it's very atmospheric.
And Lisa wraps it up with the moral of the story, which he does for the first 2 acts, but not the last one.
Yeah, it's funny. Both acts, like the first story and the second story, end with disappointment. Like, oh boy, I guess we suck, don't we?
Yeah, as it sucks. Like, and in both cases, it's like, oh, you thought it'd be a sad ending, but actually, we're the monsters. Like, both are the we're the monsters kind of ending. It's also it's a weird feeling to leave on the first segment with Lisa, them just going like, can't but feel a little bit rejected, and then they just walk down the street. I mean, too, and I feel like in my first viewing of it, I didn't know it was a series of scary stories, so I think I had some level of confusion in my first viewing of like, oh wait, this it's over now, and then I didn't know it was going to be a trio of stories. As we come back from the commercial, Homer is actually very scared by that last story. Like, he's just shivering in fear. But Bart, not so scared.
That wasn't scary at all, Bart. Oh, yeah? Well, how about this severed finger? Ew, baby spit. Well, that last story was just a warm-up for this macabre tale, which I call Hungry Are the Damned.
And I just got that that's Bart mispronouncing macabre with macabre.
It's actually macabre, Henry.
Oh, excuse me. Man, here I'm fucking up here too. The severed finger trick as a kid, that did scare me just briefly. I had never seen that before.
But the whole when you can take off your own thumb kind of thing with your two hands.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool trick.
Ketchup in there or put it in some cotton or something.
But Maggie called his bluff there. Although his "you baby spit" is also very ADR. I like but yeah, so Hungry Are the Damned is it's quite a parody. It's the first Twilight Zone parody the show would do, but hardly the last.
Yeah, and I mean the series was in constant reruns from its original airing, so it was very relevant. And I think like that is why the Tower of Terror was allowed to happen, just because people it was in the cultural memory in the early 90s. It was like it was relevant enough for people to want to go on a ride, even though there were no new Twilight Zones currently.
Right.
But the New Year's Day reruns, you'd watch them all the time. It was always kept on in my house just to see him, because also like as a kid finding out about the Twilight Zone and then finding out there were seemingly an endless number of episodes of it, I felt like I'd never run out of them, even though I still don't think I've watched all of them. I actually did watch the To Serve Man episode ahead of this recording, and it's not as good. It's not very good. Weak episode, honestly. It's interesting to see a young Richard Keel though.
Yeah, Ega.
I like seeing Jaws. Yes, I was gonna say Jaws, but
nope,
you're right.
He's Ega. That's all he is to me. Yeah, like I didn't watch it for the first time until like our last time we did this episode. I had no idea like what the parody really was, although I did appreciate this. But yeah, in the Twilight Zone episode, yes, the aliens are going to eat the humans, and that's why their book is a hilarious pun, which is very stupid. But in this one, it's like the setup is just like, yes, it's so obvious they're going to eat them, but then they don't.
Yes.
So it is a very fun parody. Sorry to over-explain things, but if you haven't seen the original Twilight Zone episode, you might not know what they're doing here.
I like how labored it is within the episode, too. It takes it from being just a reference to that to getting to be its own joke, which is really fun.
I think Kogan and Wolodarski are really good at one of my favorite things I like in comedy, which is a very well written, intentionally poorly written story. Like, if you read this in the kind of EC comic that this evoking, you would think this is badly written because it terribly heavily foreshadows a thing that then doesn't happen, and then gives you a moral of the story that doesn't make sense. and them writing it so specifically in that way is great. And Rich Moore, the director of this one, this is another of his best.
Would you say these parodies are now more popular than the original source material? Like, people know these more?
I think people know Kang and Kodos more than the Twilight Zone now, I think.
But like the It's a Good Life parody with Bart is the magic boy with brain powers.
Oh,
I think like every parody they've done that has now supplanted the original source material in the cultural memory of all of us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even, Kang and Kodos are so much more famous than like the EC Comics monsters that kind of inspired them, even though there isn't a particular EC comic cover that inspired them. But it's like, we know those characters so much more than we can think, oh, these are like a specifically old-timey EC comic character.
I will say, if you look up the cover for Weird Science number 6 from 1951, the Al Feldstein drawn cover, it's a bit Kang and Kodos-y. Like it's not like one-to-one, but they are green aliens with like, space helmets on.
I think they are based on a doodle by Jay Kogan. Like, he couldn't convey what he wanted with writing for the animator, so he kind of like drew a doodle like, no, do it like this.
Yeah, there seem to be like a few different Weird Science covers where it's like, the number 6 one kind of has the tentacle sort of thing, and then I saw there was another one that was number 16 that kind of had alien in like a bubble-headed outfit. Yeah, it's kind of just like a mashup of like, this is what aliens look like. And also, we had space mutants by this time too.
Yeah.
And they kind of feel like the bigger brothers to the space mutants.
Yeah, as soon as Kang and Kodos were invented, the space mutants were forgotten about. It's like, no, we have our space mutants now. It's Kang and Kodos.
Yeah, and they look so much more specific and cool than just like the blobby aliens of the space mutant films. I think too about things replacing stuff. It's like in our childhoods, we got to see the revamps of things that the Gen Xers and Boomers before us had. Like, we knew the Crypt Keeper and Tales from the Crypt because there was the HBO show made by kids who grew up with it. And we knew at least the term Weird Science as the name of a movie and then a TV show because the people who loved those comics as a kid then made movies. But it kind of ended with us. Like, there's not more Weird Science, and I don't think there's been a new Tales from the Crypt in a long time.
There's a new Twilight Zone, but it's buried on CBS. Streaming
that's right,
sites.
the Jordan Peele one.
Yeah.
Right. I think the kind of anthology series is just not popular right now, especially because you're expected to be able to catalog every single piece of media and go back and watch it again. So why would you make a show that's all one-offs, when you can make one long miniseries that everybody has to binge?
I think Black Mirror was the last one of those, and I don't know if they've done a Black Mirror parody on Treehouse yet.
I think they did.
Okay.
I think they did, yeah. I think last year, 30 had a Black Mirror parody, or a parody of a specific Black Mirror episode that I had to look up. I haven't watched it either.
It seems like a real bring down, honestly. I'm looking in the Black Mirror every day. I'm checking Twitter.
I just know it as the joke people say about like, what if your phone was watching you? But yeah, so this section here begins with a joke that I'm glad the commentary was there to explain, because I always forget that Homer's mafia staff apron makes no sense otherwise. But it is a reference to when The Godfather was new, they made merchandise for it, or people made knockoff merchandise like, I'm the official mafia chauffeur or whatever.
And bumper stickers like mafia staff car.
Yeah. So
wow.
So now it's explained. It makes no sense.
The mafia was a new idea when The Godfather came out. It was a fairly new idea. People didn't know about the mafia until fairly shortly before that.
Sopranos just killed it then. Like, it just we knew it too well after that.
And I do like this gag with the lighter fluid, but it makes me think of the heightening of this gag from Lisa the Vegetarian. And I watched the clip again, and it is funnier because Homer squirts all the lighter fluid out of the bottle, and then when you think he's going to light it, he gets another bottle, squirts all of it out, and then when he lights it, it lights nicely. But this takes like 40 seconds to do. It's so great, and I love that gag so much.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's setting the stage for our expectations for this gag. They could do this gag once a season.
I feel like this giant fireball gag was in like every clip package they put in for a time. But yeah, until Mark Kirkland's vegetarian episode, which that one, I like it. It's also my favorite embellishment of that one is how Homer, when he squeezes it, he's coating the sides of it too.
And how the spray comes out in like a triangular fashion. It's great.
But I mean, this is a good joke, but then it just leads to a giant fireball. But and yeah, there's also a really great shot of as they're all relaxing with the. Is it supposed to be a fly joke when there's like a scream from the fly that hits the bug zapper? Is that a reference to the original Fly? It's very odd.
Yeah, I don't know what it could be, but that might be it, because it's just a bug zapper joke, and it seems kind of lame for The Simpsons, even in 1990, I think.
But the shot of Lisa like chewing on a hayseed and then looking up and seeing the saucer, like that's just great. It's like just really good space aliens arrive kind of shots. I love it. And the design of the saucer, so gorgeous.
Yeah, you've got that great dolly zoom effect into Lisa that, totally worth shelling out whatever post they did to get that to work.
And we were talking about the lighting in the first segment. I love how many different colors of light all the family is bathed in throughout the first part of this alien segment.
Yeah, I think Lisa especially goes through like 8 different colors in this segment, just from all the lighting choices. It's very it is the kind of bold stuff that even like 10 years later, they wouldn't have this kind of crazy lighting changes on people. So the alien, the spaceship arrives, it picks them up one by one. The music cues on the tractor beam, just like, oh god, that was the moment I really was like, Alf Clausen, like this is what got him hired. I felt like
you can see why they didn't go for like a 4th composer this year. Like, no, he's our guy.
No more auditions.
I mean, yeah, the scale of this segment, especially like when they're flying through space and stuff, like, Alf, his music totally sells it. It's like the thing that makes it feel like, oh shit, this is really happening. You know?
He goes from like the 80s Poltergeist music parody to like the 50s sci-fi flying saucer like theremin music, and then to like the more like, I guess, Victorian era music for the Raven.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, his like that just shows his adaptability of style, which really helps this series that it can just satire a different thing on a dime of just like, it's going to be this kind of movie parody now. Can you write music that sounds like this film? And he just does it. He can just handle it all. You talk about what scared you as a kid. As a kid, I'm fine with it now, but I actually was really grossed out. I didn't like Kang and Kodos when I first saw them because it actually did gross me out how much they drooled.
Drooled.
Like, the constant drooling seriously disgusted me.
Yeah, the drool totally bothered me too, but and now they have to drool.
Yeah.
And they'll just be drooling all the time forever.
Yeah, I love how the fun mislead of you think they're drooling because they want to eat The Simpsons. That's just something baked into the joke of the character. Now they just drool forever for no reason.
Drool.
I think that was a really smart choice, because in the commentary they mentioned that, we'll just have them drool once at the beginning and then no more. And then the animators went through the trouble of having them always drool. And I feel like that was a really good choice. I think without that, it wouldn't feel as unsettling as it does.
And yeah, seeing them, I just chuckle now thinking how they've so quickly became institutions like Kang and Kodos there, and not so much their third mate, but seeing them in this as just this one-off crazy thing, I then think about how in 2015 I went to Universal Orlando, and you can ride basically a parody of the Dumbo ride that is
that's right.
Kang Kodos moving you up and down in a spaceship, and it's crazy to think there's just this giant, actually bigger than life-size Kodos just sitting around in Universal Orlando.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's it's a relatively minor Simpsons thing when you think about it. But yeah, the fact that it's so recognizable, it's just, hats off to, the character design specifically. It's just very striking.
But yes, Kang and Kodos introduce themselves in this next clip.
Greetings, Earthlings. I am Kang. Do not be frightened. We mean you no harm.
You speak English?
I am actually speaking Rigelian. By an astonishing coincidence, both of our languages are exactly the same.
Well, what are you going to do with us, man?
Kodos and I are taking you to Rigel 4, a world of infinite delights to tantalize your senses and challenge your intellectual limitations.
Look, I know that to you we Simpsons are a lower order of life, We face that prejudice every day of our lives, but we are happy on our little planet. We throw ourselves on your mercy. Please return us to...
Dinner time. Hey, get a load of that spread.
Here you go, Earthlings. Take all you want, but eat all you take.
Well, thank you very much, Mr.
To pronounce it correctly, I would have to pull out your tongue.
Ooh.
That's old Serac. Named after Spock's dad, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
James Earl Jones there with Serac, he found some phlegminess. Like, he just, rip out your tongue. Like, he's really going for it with this alien voice he's doing.
I love the joke about Wright Gillian sounding exactly like English. Just because that's like a nitpick that I just have to roll my eyes at when it's like, well, Star Wars is on an alien planet, so why is there English? It's just like, all right, come on. It's a movie.
Why are they called X-Wings? There's no letter X in their language. Come on.
That's true, yeah. Now it's been fun to see, and I've been watching, Mandalorian as I am told, as society demands I do. But I also like it. It's a good show. But see, when they have to show here's the note they left, it has to be written in the blocky alphabet that was later established by. To me, it still looks weird. I just assume wait, the language of basic in the world of Star Wars. It confuses me when it's spoken English, but it's not written English too.
Yeah, too much thought, if you ask me. Just make it English. It's fine.
And Lisa did a lot of these kind of speeches back then, in Dance and Homer, she makes this kind of speech of we're a simple people who can't leave this town. I think of this the kind of speeches they gave to Lisa back then, and also hearing the sound design. Though they've got Alf, the sound design is still like the first season.
A lot of wriggling tentacles in the background.
Yeah, and Maggie's pacifier just over dialogue, and also some loud shoes.
Oh, really. Yeah. They have not silenced the shoes yet in this timeline. I
think it was the first time I, as a kid, heard the phrase, take all you want, but eat all you take. That's an important, remember that when you go to, I guess buffets are over now. No more buffets. They're not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, and then
just don't go anyway. Yeah. It's fine.
It's not very good. And then we get another pork chops and applesauce thing for Homer, which will disappear after season 2. But that was an early run here for him. We saw that when he was captured as Bigfoot and eating pork chops, he was like, more applesauce.
That's right. Yeah. His pork chop stuff goes away in season 3. I think I do like that how impressed they are that the aliens made the most pedestrian of dishes when you'd imagine they could make anything. So fried shrimp, sloppy joes, and pork chops. And
Marge is impressed by the radish rosettes. They're a very advanced race.
I love that. I watched a YouTube video on how to make them. It does seem very difficult. I don't think I'll give it a shot. But also just all of their staring at them, the licking of lips,
your wife is quite a dish.
I love that. Which I guess really is Sarek thinks that Marge is very attractive and is telling Homer that that's extra. When you know the twist, then it's even funnier.
They're all being super genuine. It's nice.
Even though they're laughing to themselves quite a lot at how genuine they're being. But also some fantastic interiors to the spaceship too.
Yeah, it's great.
The design, amazing. But yes, the aliens are showing them around their ship. That includes a gamer joke that I did get as a youngster. Not every reference I got at age 8, but I did get this
I got
one.
that because I had an Atari 2600. That was my first gaming console, and I was like, that was 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. I'm playing Nintendo now.
We're so advanced. Yeah, I couldn't imagine that Pong anything could look better than Mega Man 3 back then. But yeah, I like this little exchange here.
It is our great pleasure to provide you with unlimited entertainment on your intergalactic journey. On this cable system, we receive over 1 million channels from the furthest reaches of the galaxy.
You get HBO?
No, that would cost extra. And over here is our crowning achievement in amusement technology. An electronic version of what you call table tennis. Your primitive paddles have been replaced by an electronic...
Hey, that's just Pong. Get with the times, man.
Marge and I played that old game before we were married.
Well, we did build this spaceship, you know.
Anyone from a species that has mastered intergalactic travel, raise your hand. All right, then.
Sorry. Your game is very nice.
I love how embarrassed Marge is like, your game is very nice.
That alien was just quoting George Meyer.
Yeah, this has come up so many times on their commentaries where it's just, this was George Meyer trolling the writers, where if a writer said, I don't like this movie or I don't like this album, he would say, number of Oscars won by person, number of Oscars won by you, 0. Like that just came up in the Bart to the Future episode of Marge saying,
that's right.
Treasure chest found by Homer, 0. I mean, I guess it does shut things down, but also it's like, you can still you don't have to win awards to be, or sell 1 million albums to have an opinion on a record.
Well, now they're all, I mean, as of like later in the year, they would all be like gold record or platinum record winners.
Platinum, yeah.
For Sing the Blues.
Al Jean can legitimately call himself a platinum recording artist. As a kid, I knew that it looked worse. And also, though, the idea that like it did confuse me as a kid, the thought that like, oh, my parents could have played Pong before I was born. Like just thinking about what did my parents do before I was born? Like just putting that thought in my head was kind of mind blowing then. But yes, we then get the shots of them talking about them being guests of honor, like them saying they want to chew the fats. Like, it's so oh my god, them picking up the plates. Just
the way the shot is framed, where the camera is sort of like on the ground looking up at the table, and when they pull the lids off of the plates, the Simpsons heads are behind them.
Yeah,
it's such a stagey shot, but I like how funny it is as a sight gag.
Yeah, that got a huge laugh out of me. It's really fun to look at.
Because when they pull the lid off of Homer, I think he goes, "Ooh, a feast!"
Yes.
Because they're asking like, "Why do you guys never eat?" And they say, "Oh, there'll be a great feast on Rigel 4 when we arrive."
What looks to be their severed heads on a platter and they're just so happy as they say. It's the smiling of Homer and Marge as they say it that makes it 10 times funnier. But again, when you know the twist, why are Kang and Kodos and Sarek all laughing at this?
Why
is it so funny?
Why are they weighing them?
Yes, yeah. Which that's straight out of the Twilight Zone. They do weigh everybody.
That's true.
Yeah,
yeah, it's great. I mean, the whole segment is a huge screw you to the audience. So having to watch it again is just like so many questions here.
It doesn't have the replayability of other Kang and Kodos ones, I guess, which also they're friendly aliens in this one, but they're evil every other time they're in the show.
I think this turned them. They're like, humans, we can't trust them.
We should have just eaten them, they said. Yeah, and another just great moment of like Lisa going into the room and seeing Sarek just say like, this will give them the perfect flavor. He just means that he wants them to have the nicest flavor they could have. But Lisa finds the book, and this, I'll just play the original clip from the Twilight Zone. This is how the reveal goes of It's a Cookbook.
Mr. Chambers, don't get on that ship. The rest of the book, To Serve Man, it's a cookbook. And they get shoved up an escalator, or like a bunch of stairs just move up and shove them in the ship.
So they translate the alien language, and apparently even in their language, serve has 2 meanings.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's incredible localization by these translators. But it's I mean, it's such a labored thing to get to. But it's and then what's even weirder in the Twilight Zone, that then it ends with like the guy on the spaceship then just talks directly to camera like, "Are you gonna be eaten? It'll happen to one of us someday." I was like, all right, we got it.
I'd rather it be Rod Serling.
Yeah,
talking to me.
Was Rod Serling busy that week or something? Why couldn't he be on camera for that? But yes, it's funnier when Yardley says all these lines as she discovers a very dusty book.
Listen, you big, stupid space creature. Nobody eats the Simpsons.
I beg your pardon?
Don't play dumb with me. We found your book.
You mean this? It's a harmless cookbook. It's just a little dusty.
Wait a minute.
Wait, there's still more space dust on here. Let me get this straight. You thought they thought we were going to eat them. Good God. Is this some kind of joke? No. They're serious.
Well, why were you trying to make us eat all the time?
Make you eat? We merely provided a sumptuous banquet. And frankly, you people made pigs of yourselves.
I slaved in the kitchen for days for you people, and...
Well, if you wanted to make Serac the Preparer cry, mission accomplished.
You aren't the only beings who have emotions, you know.
Oh, that's so great. And I just heard an audio joke I didn't pick up when I was watching this. You heard that like squeaky noise? Serac is crying and he's wiping the front of his glass dome with the tissue. That's why you hear that like squeaky like window cleaning noise.
It's brilliant. I love the term space dust.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But just the line, "Oh look, there's more space dust."
Oh God. Yeah, and that they have a little panel for blowing dust off in their thing that they can open up. God. They said that they credit John Vitti for coming up with the continually blowing off the dust thing, but
the color change when Lisa blows off the dust, it says how to cook 40 humans. It's like bathed in red light. You know, the light transition is so cool.
Oh God, yeah. It's the red and blue against each other. It's like such a stark shot. Like especially also when right at the start of the scene where Kang comes in and says like, "Humans, you have stopped eating." Like the coloring on that shot too is gorgeous in its boldness. I wish they hadn't moved away from that kind of like extreme coloring in when a moment calls for it.
Yeah, again, the lighting throughout the show is one of the things that really elevates it. It's like you have the music, but definitely like you're seeing like more complicated camera angles and colors that you've ever seen on the show. And it really turns it into something different.
And I love Kang and Kodos becoming like the
good God.
Just these put upon hosts too are just like, make you frankly you're acting like pigs. Like just being passive aggressive. Like it works too is just a great like end of a sketch. Like this could just be a sketch. If you replace the Simpsons with just random family in an SNL sketch, it would work just the same.
And I like how they're like the Twilight Zone always has a lesson or a moral, and this one it's just like you should trust people even if they're acting very suspicious.
Yes, yeah. No, I have that clip too here.
We offered you paradise. You would have experienced emotions 100 times greater than what you call love, and 1,000 times greater than what you call fun. You would have been treated like gods, and lived forever in beauty. But now, because of your distrustful nature, that can never be.
For a superior race, they really rub it in.
There were monsters on that ship. And truly, we were them.
Lisa, see what we mean when we say you're too smart for your own good?
Way to go, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Lisa ruins everything.
Poor Lisa, man.
Poor Lisa.
Even
Homer being like, "Yeah, thanks, Lisa."
I missed the Marge at the end.
Yeah. Lisa's pronouncement, makes that the moral of the story, but I think it could just end with Marge going like, they really rub it in. Like that. That's so great because there's so many Twilight Zones that end with a person saying, well, you could have had paradise, but blah, blah, blah. It'd be so great in all of those if the character's like, all right, I get it. You don't have to rub it in.
I'm talking to the audience now, not you. Yeah, even as a kid, even today, as a kid, I was like kind of bummed out by that, and I still am. Just like, oh, they totally missed out on a fun time.
Yes.
To be immortal.
Basically heaven. They were denied heaven.
I love the scale of 100 times greater than love and 1,000 times greater than fun.
Oh yes, great. Yeah.
It's been quantified.
That love is at a certain level, fun at another, and it's the one is 10 times greater than that. There is a slight animation mistake, but I can see why they didn't retake it because it's the big pan up at the end.
Oh yeah,
Marge has white pearls instead of her usual red ones, but it's like that's such a complicated one that a retake on that's going to cost you a lot more, I'd bet.
Yeah, I'm sure they were just like, it's a miracle it's this good, let's just go with it.
And then we get to the final segment, which
yes.
I think when we first did this, we bagged on this too much. It's just like we said it was uninteresting or like, they just read the Raven. Like, I really appreciate the acting in this, and also like Silverman made basically a Warner short in this.
Yeah, I forget what I said about it, but I do think now it's really cool, but I do think they have something to prove. They definitely have something to prove. Like, we're not that dirty show your kids won't watch. We got this classic poem, and we're going to tell it to you with our characters, and James Earl Jones is going to read it with this beautiful animation. I feel like they are really trying to prove something with this, and that makes me wish they wouldn't have cut away to the Treehouse with recycled animation so often, because as it stands, I feel like that adulterates what could have been a little bit better. I would have liked to see this presented as it was intended originally, just the reading of the poem with the animation.
I definitely had a cool English teacher in high school that actually played this in class when we were studying Poe.
Oh, that's Ian. In my notes, I said English teachers everywhere can thank The Simpsons for giving them a way to teach this poem for like 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but yeah, I can kind of agree that watching it again, I was actually kind of bummed out that they seemed inconfident in the audience's attention span and being able to just watch this whole thing. I honestly do wish that The Simpsons would more often just try to just do like genuine things without giving themselves or the audience an out to say like, oh, it's just stupid, who cares?
And the cutaway jokes are not like funny.
No,
they're not funny or worth it. It just is distracting. And I just feel like, well, when they got on the commentary, they talked about when we got this back from, overseas, we were like, this is going to be the worst thing we've ever made. It's so long. It's not funny. This could make our show look bad. So we got to like spice it up a little bit. Yeah. And I wish they should have had the confidence at this point.
I can understand where they were coming from, though. Are we just going to weird out the whole audience because this is like too educational? I don't know. I think they had something really good here.
I think through Bart, they express what they fear children at home are thinking of, that they worry the kids at home are getting as bored as they portray Bart getting. And they're like, all right, we'll cut to Bart so you're not bored of this long scene. And here's your favorite Bart. He's here. He's still here, guys.
Whenever I revisit this, I always think it's going to be much drier than it actually is. It goes by super quickly, and the animation is so amazing. This is David Silverman's segment, and the storyboards are by him and Jeff Lynch. Jeff Lynch is one of the greatest directors on the show.
For sure. Like theatrical quality animation that he could bring to it in his eps. Like I think we've said that probably one of the top 3 best episodes animation wise they ever did was Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1, and that's Lynch. Like, and same the Hellfish episode is like animation wise a tour de force. I'll say too, after our Kogan interview, saying that the Raven was so important to Sam Simon, and then hearing on the commentary Groening say that he was so worried that this was too artsy fartsy and that it would be seen as over the top. That to me, and Sam Simon is not mentioned once on this commentary. Yeah. I wonder if this was like a sticking point that for Groening and maybe other producers too, when it came back, they're like, we indulged Sam too much. By the time it came back, Sam Simon is kind of moving out of power in the series because season 3 production is beginning. And maybe that's why they're like, you know what? This is what Sam wanted, but we need to cut this down. It's too much.
I guess I can totally believe that because it does feel like, they solved their problem by making Bart the Raven. So they didn't need to solve it further, but I can definitely see, your fear getting better of you and just wanting to make sure that the audience has some hard jokes in there, even though the jokes aren't too hard.
No, and I love the Bart Raven. It's such a cute design. It's so adorable.
Yeah. But here, let's hear the start of the Raven.
Hey, Poindexter, it's Halloween. Put the book away. For your information, I'm about to read you a classic tale of terror by Edgar Allan Poe. Wait a minute. That's a school book. Don't worry, Bart. You won't learn anything. It's called The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary,
while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
"'Tis some visitor,"
I muttered,
"tapping at my chamber door. Only this and interesting.
Are we scared yet? Bart, he's establishing mood.
Lisa is right to say that. Like, Bart, shut up.
Shut up.
He's establishing.
Yeah, like all these interruptions are annoying, and God, but Alf Clausen's score. I wish I could just get the score for this isolated because it's so good. In his first episode too, it's amazing. The score.
Yeah, and honestly, like just all of the artistic choices made, not only the boarding, but like the background design is really great. And I love the design of Homer's chair as well. It just gives everything this nice like focal point.
Yeah, it's this just the interior design of it all just feels like this perfect like stately old study, and Homer's character design in his like smoking jacket is so great too, and Dan's performance here, that he, you know, that James Earl Jones is doing just a great narration, like just reading of this poem in a scary dramatic way, but then Dan has to say, like, they don't change any, so they do cut about 3 or 4 stanzas from the Raven, but every word that's said is from the poem. And so Dan has to say things as Homer without changing the words.
I love when he says quaff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do love the little gags they stuck in just visually of Forgotten Lore Volume 2 is what he's reading. That he has a miniature cask of Amontillado that he's drinking out of. Like, that's there's some good little gags there. And then, oh man, as he starts to remember that bleak December and the chair like floats through the air, that's so ambitious. Silverman and Lynch and their team, wow, just to pull that off, a dream sequence within a story that's being
and
told.
Just it's full of the most amazing angles you've never seen before in this show.
Yeah, it's really hard to forget that, you know, the show never really looked like this before. And so seeing it, you can feel sort of like the clumsiness of them feeling it out, but the characters feel so solid. And I love that it kind of all takes place in this one room, which you know feels really good to me. Yeah, it's just fun to watch. Even it's not like the funniest, silliest short of this series, but it's really fun to look at.
Yeah, that's a great point. It does take place in one room, and because of that, they have to get as creative as possible with like as many different kinds of shots and all of these, like, you know, Homer floating through the chair, floating on the chair through the air and things like that. And they make the most of this in this like 4 or 5 minute segment.
Yeah. Oh man, and the shot of the smoke touching his face, like becoming hands and pulling at it, like it has kind of the feel of like, you know, scary Disney shorts too. Like it, I guess when I said this is more of I said it was a Warner short, but this actually feels like more of the when there'd be a horror short in the Disney shorts era. I think it has more of that feel.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And just overall, the whole thing, all of the like character acting is really great. You know, it's fun to see, you know, David Silverman like flex his muscles there. This is a little bit of a sidebar, but I will say, to stick up for current Simpsons, the character acting in the show has never really faltered. I feel like from the stiffer, you know, there is sort of like a middle era of Simpsons that is very stiff. But if you look at like kind of like recent episodes, you can see that there's like a lot of thought put into character acting to try and make sure that like it's on par with this like Silverman-y stuff.
Yeah. I did watch some recent ones. At the recent when we recorded this in December, in a bleak December. But yeah, there was in the Road to Cincinnati one, like Chalmers has this like big just like shouting speech at Skinner, and I do think he takes on like the acting in that is very well done. I in this bit here too, one, they bring back the old shorts era gag of a picture being not big enough to contain Marge's hair.
Right. I did like it to see it return in this way. And just the one most egregious interruption of this story I find is when they literally put the words "eat my shorts" into the Raven's mouth, which it was not there originally. You could tell he's saying nevermore, and then they cut away to Lisa going, "That's not what he says, Bart," and then they go back to the story, just like you interrupted the story to give us the T-shirt catchphrase.
I know. I mean, I guess it's slightly funnier the right before that, where like Homer opens the door and it goes darkness there, nothing more, and then Bart says, "You know, it'd be scarier than that. Anything." That's at least like not shoving in a catchphrase. It is a critique of the Raven poem. At least it's a little smarter.
They had such little animation to work with in that treehouse that like it is so obviously reused. Nothing matches, and like it's like you often get just the exterior shot of the treehouse, right?
Yes,
as they talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, and also with those rock and rolled mouths, like it stands out even more next to these like amazing like Silverman drawing. Homer screaming is such a great Silverman drawing, and then you just go back to these same 3 shots you've seen before. It really takes you out of it.
Yeah, and like, you know, the way that Silverman is drawing the characters, it's like you really feel like a master at drawing these characters at work, making them work in 3 dimensions. I feel like the Bart Raven, you see a lot of like dimensionality to its head and stuff too, as it's like flying around. It's really nice to look at.
But yes, the bird will say nothing more than nevermore.
Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed by some unseen scent.
Stupid censor.
Swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor.
Wretch!
I cried.
Thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe and forget this lost Lenore.
Quoth the Raven.
Nevermore.
No! Be that word outside of parting! Burn our feet!
I shrieked up, starting.
Get thee back into the tempest and the night Plutonian shore! No, leave no black plume as a token of the lie. Thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from off my heart and take thy form from off my door.
Quoth the Raven.
Nevermore.
Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door.
Quoth the Raven.
Nevermore.
Why, you little...
This is just explaining my life during quarantine with my parrot. Stop mocking me.
But all he says is he says other things than nevermore, though.
It's true.
Actually, you should never teach him nevermore, else he will go insane.
He calls me a bad boy. I'm saying right here on this podcast.
I also right before that in Homer's big speech to him, when he's being friendly, like the way Homer says, "Oh sure, no Craven," and he gives like a little wink. I love that.
I have to say that I didn't read this poem until after I saw this because I was 8 when this aired, and now when I read it, the few times I have read it, I just hear Homer and doing these line readings too.
Yeah. Just his, and to hear Homer just shout like quaff, oh quaff, leave my loneliness unbroken, like his screaming of that, like Dan is just acting it up here. He is, I think he had to also just raise his stature of these lines because James Earl Jones is such a, weighty actor that he has to keep up with that in it. There's some quick little basically Tom and Jerry gags of him chasing the bird around and getting books dropped on him.
And I think all the books are they all Poe books?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some good sight gags in the whole thing, and I think you can see Poe's bust behind Homer.
Yes.
In some of these scenes too.
And even the very Looney Tunes gag of the nevermore birds going around his head after getting hit. Like that's a great little shot. But I guess in the actual poem, the man in it does not physically chase after the Raven. He just kind of gives up and lays on the floor.
Well, they spiced it up.
Yeah. But yes, the ending here.
Oh, I gotta say the music in this part gives me goosebumps every time. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Raven, ever flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Lisa, that wasn't scary, not even for a poem.
Well, it was written in 1845. Maybe people were easier to scare back then.
Oh, yeah. Like when you look at Friday the 13th, Part 1. It's pretty tame by today's standards.
Children, bedtime.
I guess I'll have no trouble getting to sleep tonight.
Homer is so scared by that. It's kind of crazy.
I love that. Not even for a poem.
Yeah, that's a good line.
To go back to that music, I was just thinking, like, did they wheel a harpsichord into that studio and an organ? Like, how did they have access to all these things? It's just so amazing. God.
Yeah, the way it builds up to the last, like, Evermore, like, just boom, like, yeah, it builds so perfectly. I think you're right. This is the best bit Alf does the whole episode.
And Friday the 13th Part 1, only a decade old when this episode was new. So, yeah, 1980.
Wow. I think I wanted to watch the first Friday the 13th just so I could know Bart's reference here. Like, is it less scary than other ones? And I mean, well, Friday the 13th doesn't even feature Jason, and there's nothing magical or metaphysical to it. It's just a serial killer movie.
And all the kills are like someone being filmed going, "Oh, it's you. What are you doing here?" Yeah. Wait, no, put that down. It's kind of boring and stupid, but there is a game of Strip Monopoly in it.
Yeah, but you don't even get
no one gets naked.
Yeah, nobody even takes any clothes off.
Sleepaway Camp is the better camp movie. I've said it here.
But I didn't get the joke as a kid that Bart, as a 10-year-old, should never have seen an R-rated horror film like that one. And so him being able to say it's not as scary is pretty funny.
I guess by 1989, they were already at Part 8.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was like one a year.
That's too many.
From 80, yeah.
And it cuts to all the kids in bed. You get to see Maggie sleeping with a Binky doll, which is a little cute. But I guess Homer then saying he hates Halloween. I guess he forever after does hate Halloween because it scared him too much. And I can see why they cut these kind of, all the wraparounds are not necessary. And once I think they only were here to keep it grounded to some extent, and also because they wanted it to still feel like a real episode that had scary stories in it.
Yeah, they would drop that by season 6. Season 5 had the Night Gallery parody, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Right, that was the last one. Yeah, and even then, the Night Gallery one isn't taking place in reality. So by that point, it's like, yeah, who cares?
Yeah, in that one they're just talking to the screen anyway. I think too it was that, like, talking about how they amped up the violence so much. Like Merc in seasons made it so the zombie apocalypse thing in season 4 is also pretty violent, but the blood it was Merkin who's like, this has to be blood everywhere. And David Silverman was there for it, like for 5, but we've said it before, but the season 5 one is so
gorgeous.
Amazing. But I mean, this is a start for it. It sets the tone so much for what their Halloween specials would be, and they'd be so much more ambitious after this. But this started a Halloween an American tradition, honestly, that is now gone on for 31 years in a row. So pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see it all start here. Oh, I also wanted to mention the Bongo Comics Treehouse of Horror.
Yes.
Because those are really fun. There are a lot of them are guest edited, and they really are kind of trying to go do like full on EC horror style things. I think one of my favorite ones was this is from a few years back now, but I think it's number 15 that I'm pretty sure it was Sammy Harcum guest edited. Has like the whole thing is really hilarious. I think that's the one with the Paper Rad story where all the Simpsons bootlegs come to life. And finally, like, it's like a off-model Homer and Black Bart Simpson, like, killing the real Simpsons. It's really, really good.
I gotta check that one out. I've read a few of them, and they are like some of the best. They take it even a step farther because of what they can do in comics.
And that is how my now wife, I can say it now, because at this point in time we are married. That's how she won her Eisner, with her Death Note parody.
That's right.
In Treehouse of Horror Comics.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they're all really, really fun reads, and congratulations.
and their covers are great too. Like I think Morrison, Bill Morrison, the then editor-in-chief of it. I remember the first issue of Simpson Comics #1. The reverse side is just a full-on Tales from the Crypt parody comic where Homer goes crazy, and he's actually the character design's the same as this one, and it's about him going crazy in his vault full of comics as he has to burn them all for warmth. It's a story of comic collecting gone mad.
Oh, by the way, the artist's name is Nina Matsumoto. She's not just Bob Mackey's wife.
Yes.
That's just one of her many skills.
But yeah, I know that for a lot of Simpsons fans, the comics are like an acquired taste, but I think it's absolutely worth picking up some of those Treehouse of Horror issues because they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, we don't know the fate of Matt Groening's new comic label as of this recording. Like, there were seemingly going to be Disenchantment comics, but those never came into being.
Yeah.
And he did start a new comics label, and there are like stories about it, but there's been nothing, at least that I've found yet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually. Oh man, now you're gonna make me. I'm gonna have to order some Treehouse collections on Amazon soon or something, because I could they go out of print? Like Bongo technically doesn't exist anymore, does it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think some of the back issues of the comic are like starting to get expensive. So yeah,
I have an inside connection. But Ian, thank you so much for being on the show. Please let us know where we can find you online, and anything else you want to promote. Do it here, please.
Hey, yeah, follow me on Twitter at IanJQ, IANJQ. I'm just, a nice guy. I love cartoons. Maybe I'll be making some new cartoons soon, but you can check me out there and say hi.
And it's always a good time to watch OKKO Let's Be Heroes on HBO Max.
That's right.
But that would cost
HBO
extra,
Max,
right?
Or Hulu if you got it.
But thank you so much, Ian. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
So thanks again to Ian Jones-Quartey for being on the show. Please check out all of his stuff. He does great work, and we love having him on here. But as for us, if you want to check out more of our stuff, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up at the $5 level. You get access to all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes all of the podcasts we made for the past 3.5 years. That is so many, and too many to mention here, but we've done the most recent one was Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 2. That was 9 new episodes of Talking Futurama to close out the year of 2020, and there will be 2 new miniseries coming at you in the spring and the fall of 2021, only for patrons of $5 or higher on patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. So much is going on there. But if you sign up for $10 a month, you get all the $5 stuff and also access to 1 mega-long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob, you're talking about the What a Cartoon Movie podcast. Our sister podcast, What a Cartoon, where every week we cover an animated series. Once a month for the $10 and up patrons, we cover a different animated feature film in the same way that we cover these animated shows and The Simpsons. Recent ones have included Dexter's Laboratory, Ego Trip, The End of Evangelion, and Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And a gigantic back catalog is open to you if you are a $10 and up subscriber at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. So please sign up today for over 2 years of exclusive premium Patreon content. And also you'd get things like our video commentary on the deleted scenes of Simpsons Season 11. That's also available to $10 and up subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, along with all of the $5 stuff Bob just talked about. So please check that out.
So as for me, I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. And my other podcast, by the way, is Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast all about old video games. You can find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts and sign up there for 2 bonus episodes every month. That's patreon.com/Retronauts. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. I'm tweeting up a storm there all the time at HENEREYG. And you're following me and Bob on Twitter. You really should be following the official Twitter account of Talking Simpsons and the rest of our podcasts. That is at Talk Simpsons Pod. At Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter gives you all your updates when new podcasts go live for Talking Simpsons, for What a Cartoon, on the free feed and the Patreon, and all of the bonus content we make. You stay informed if you are a follower of at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next time for February's episode of our community podcast, Talk to the Audience, and we'll see you then.
like a vortex, a gateway into another dimension.
Ooh, a vortex. Catch! Hey, pretty slick.
Quit throwing your garbage into our dimension.
With everything you have on your plate, earning your degree online seems impossible. But at Grand Canyon University, we specialize in helping you fit a master's degree in business into your busy day. Your graduation team, led by your own GCU counselor, provides you with the personal support you need to succeed. Achieve your goals with a plan and team behind you. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
Spin your passion into a business with Shopify and break sales records with the world's best converting checkout. Let's hear that one more time. The world's best converting checkout. Shopify's legendary checkout makes it easier for customers to shop on your website, across social media, and everywhere in between. Now that's music to your ears. Any way you spin it, you can be a smash hit with Shopify. Start your $1 a month trial today at shopify.com/records.